Hello everyone, this is Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com, and today we have my final hand from the $5,000 buy-in World Series of Poker event I final tabled. And given us my final hand, that is sad and unfortunate, and you can already tell ahead of time that I lose. The question is, how do I lose? So we pick up pocket jacks with a 38 big blind stack under the gun, and I make a bit more than a min raise. Folds around to Jonathan Jaffe, a very good loose aggressive player in the small blind. We have a bit of history, and I do believe he thinks I am somewhat on the tighter side, and he elects to 3-bet. So I made it 115,000. He made it 325,000. It's worth mentioning all the other stacks at the table were roughly equal to ours. So if I go broke here, it's not like I'm committing ICM suicide, which is when you go broke as a decent middle stack, as I am, when there are a lot of other shorter stacks at the table. But in this spot, I think the shortest stack had something like 25 big blinds, and the biggest stack had something like 70 big blinds. So we're kind of in the middle of the pack, but no one's obviously going broke next. So in that scenario, you should be a little bit more inclined to take risks, because it's not like you're guaranteed to move up the payouts just by sitting around. If one or two players had like 5 or 10 big blinds remaining, I would definitely not be willing to go all in this spot. That should be obvious that my options here are to either call or go all in. So we have a 2 million chip stack, and typically, whenever you can shove for between about 5 and 8 times whatever your opponent made it, which in this spot, 5 times would be 1.5 million, 8 times would be 2.4 million. Notice I am right in that sweet spot with my 1.8 million behind. Shoving is often a good option because your opponent's rarely getting the right price to call, and you should have a lot of fold equity. Of course, when you do get called, you're not really loving it, even with a hand as strong as jacks, because your opponent's usually going to have aces, kings, queens, jacks, tens, then ace, king, and ace, queen. However, by shoving, you force your opponent to fold a lot of hands that have equity, like pocket, or like ace, queen, for example. Although with pocket jacks, you're really not forcing many worse hands to fold. So one other thing we will have to take note of here is that at this point at the final table, I believe Jaffe and myself were the best players remaining. So does Jaffe really want to mess around with me, given we are the two of the better players remaining, especially when he's out of position from the big blind? And I would definitely venture to say no. Jaffe does love to defend his big blind, which kind of implies that when he does 3-bet, it's usually with premium hands because he's often calling with a lot of his good but marginal hands. So I would not be shocked here if his range is almost entirely value hands. So what are the value hands? That's probably going to be hands like aces, kings, queens, jacks, tens, nines, and ace, king. And maybe ace, queen. And he may not even 3-bet ace, queen, and pocket nines and pocket tens. So if you were to tell me that was his range, I would definitely just call, because I do not want to get it all in versus almost that entire range. I have pretty much no fold equity. But if he's 3-betting stuff like 8-5 suited and 8-4 suited and 9-5 suited, or maybe hands like 5-4 offsuit or ace-2 offsuit, well, then that changes things completely, because now I'm going to have a lot of fold equity if I shove. And also, it's not really that bad to call whenever he has a bunch of air. The problem is when he has a bunch of air is that he's going to bluff me on some various flops. Like imagine he has 8-5 suited and it comes ace-4-2. If he bets, I'm in a pretty nasty spot. Same thing if it comes king something something or king queen something. I would probably call on most flops, even if it was ace something something, king something something, or queen something something. But if he decides to bet the turn and the river, I'm probably going to end up folding. So by calling, I do get outplayed sometimes. And by shoving, I never get outplayed. One other thing worth mentioning here is that if I shove and win the pot, meaning Jaffe folds, I will have chipped up to a decent, decently more, what am I trying to say? I'll have more chips than he does by a reasonable margin. So now perhaps he has to tighten up a little bit because I can apply pressure to him and put him in ICM trouble, especially if someone gets shorter in the future. So all this combined makes me think I need to shove if Jaffe's 3-betting range is more than just the nuts. Of course, his 3-betting range may be only the nuts, and if that's the case, then I definitely want to call. So it's always important to try to figure out what's going on. And I think he's going to have some bluffs in his range, but maybe he just doesn't. And that's really the hard thing about poker, is that you have no real way of knowing if he is going to be capable of bluffing in the spot or not. So in this scenario, I actually decided to 4-bet small to try to give him room to shove with stuff like ace-5 offsuit and 8-5 suited. I don't think it's that different than going all in. I highly doubt he's going to be calling my 3-bet from, I'm sorry, my 4-bet from out of position very often at all. So, especially against very loose aggressive players who are well-versed in 4-bets and 5-bets and 6-bets, etc., as Jaffe is, I think you want to give them all the room in the world to bluff so that we can perhaps get him to shove with ace-5 offsuit or something like that. He did have ace-king suited, and kind of similar to the last hand that I did for Poker News. Make sure you check out all of the past hands if you have not. You can find them on my YouTube channel. Seeing ace-king suited doesn't tell us anything about his range. If we saw ace-5 offsuit here, well, then we know our play was fantastic, win or lose. When we see ace-king suited, though, it doesn't really tell us anything. And if we ran this situation a bunch of times and he shows up with ace-king and pocket jacks and pocket queens, etc., well, then maybe our play is not so good at all. So, again, this play varies from either reasonably good to perhaps very bad, and it's hard to know which one it is. So, we end up getting it all in, and we have a flip, which, it's not really the end of the world. But then they give him the nuts and I'm out. So that is pretty rough. We ended up cashing out pretty decently in this tournament. I don't exactly remember how much we got. I just paused the video and looked it up. It was $85,000 for this finish, which is, not bad. Not good, but not bad. I believe first was something like $600,000. So, 85 is a long way from 600, but that is what happens sometimes. Notice if we do win this flip, we are actually in great shape to then sort of run over the table because we will have many more chips than most of the other players. But it didn't work out for me this time. So that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoy these type of hands and these videos, definitely check out my interactive poker quiz site at pokercoaching.com. We have a free trial there where you can try out the quizzes to see if you like them. And if you like these videos, if you watched all of them I've done here at Poker News, there are a lot of them now, you will definitely like pokercoaching.com. So thanks a lot for being here. I appreciate it. Be sure to check back next week for another educational poker video. Thanks for watching.